Howdy, howdy, folks, and welcome to Moose Podcast 316. Trust you're doing great. Here in Montana, we had fall yesterday, winter today, snowing this morning when I got out from underneath those warm covers. I love the change of seasons. The light's killer. Photography is hot, even though the air is cool. Hope you're having the same great experience as I am. I've been a little bit off the grid for the past almost 2 weeks now, as I've been in New Mexico with a great week, and then just in Yellowstone had a great week. All you folks in the Park Service there in Yellowstone, my hat's off to you. You guys have done a great job. Uh, we had no problems traveling in and out of the park on the north entrance. Thanks to you guys, I am grateful for all you're doing for us and our wild heritage. So thank you. Also, want to thank my good friends at Bedford Camera, bedfords.com. They just had an amazing photocon this past weekend. Glad to see so many of you were there. I've heard nothing but great things. But Bedfords, as I keep telling you, they're the folks with the great inventory, great prices, great service, in the home of the Moose discounts. So as you get ready for Christmas, it's coming up. Remember, okay, to think of Bedford for those presents as well as everything else. Bedfords.com, home of the Moose discount. Got a couple things I want to mention. First of all, Adobe just dropped major updates in Photoshop, in Lightroom, Adobe Camera Raw, Premiere, Audition, the whole suite. If you haven't gone and updated, you need to. At the same time, Nick 5 just had a big update as well. So it's update week, I guess. Pound that bandwidth, get up to date. There's some really cool new features. Head over to Kelvin 1. Scott did a really nice video. Brings you up to date with what's new and how to take advantage of it. It's really cool. You got to remember to shoot for the subject and finish for the light. And these are the great tools for doing it. Also want to thank you guys. Any questions? Gotten really busy. I love it. It's a marvelous way of asking questions and for me to answer them. So hey, thanks for all you're doing. Also, not new, but kind of new to me. Night Sky had a major update sometime in the last, I don't know, 3, 4 years. It's been that long. I got it when it first came out. Felt it being a little clunky. I was reintroduced to it. And Night Sky is a marvelous app for so many applications. Once you turn off that crazy music they think that you need to hear, it is just an amazing job. So if you've not checked out the app Night Sky, if you're doing heavenly bodies or anything else in the night sky, it is truly a really great tool, really educational and entertaining. I'm gonna get into this week's episode because let me introduce you to Kelvin. Kelvin plays a part in your photography, has since the very beginning. It is poorly understood and definitely not used as it should. And it has a big, big influence on your photography. So I take it humbly as my honor to introduce you to Kelvin. I'm going to start by going back in time. I'm going back to a college textbook of mine back in 1980. Encyclopedia of Photography, third edition. It's a 900-page door jam that I have kept. Of all my books, it's the one I kept because it has, well, it has words of wisdom for those who want to read it. So I'm going to turn to the page 407 where it goes and starts explaining Kelvin. So bear with me. Kelvin, a temperature scale having its zero at minus 273.16 Celsius and scale intervals equal to those of the Celsius scale. Color temperature of light is given in kelvins, for example, 300 and K. That's where it stops. Then it says, see also color temperature. Okay, so first thing to note, the Encyclopedia of Photography is already bailing on talking about Kelvin right there. That should be your first indication that you are getting ready to jump into that rabbit hole. So now I'm going to go to, as it said, see color temperature. And it says color temperature. Number two. So there's parentheses number one. Number one talks about all light sources emit electromagnetic radiation, some of which is in the visible region between 400 and 700 nanometers in wavelength. Yeah, no, not what we need when it comes to Kelvin. So now I'm going to go to number two, color temperature. In computer imaging, color temperature is supposedly a measure of the color quality of the monitor image. It assumes that the monitor adheres to a heat to light relationship, as does a black body radiator. Okay, so in the encyclopedia, first thing to note is it bails on Kelvin. And then number two, it says supposedly a measure of color quality. Well, so much for book definitions helping us get to know Kelvin. Now you might be wondering, what in the hay am I ranting about this week? Well, white balance. White balance is based on Kelvin, lowercase k. And if you dig into your instruction manual, most camera manufacturers spell out their range of Kelvin. So, for example, a lot of them, when it says auto white balance, it says 3,000 to 8,000 Kelvin. And then it'll say something like shady, or cloudy is 6,000 and shady is 7,000. And then some cameras have a K that you can set the Kelvin manually. Most people don't investigate any of these things. And why would you, right? If the Encyclopedia of Photography bails on the definition of Kelvin and then says things like supposedly, it kind of gives you the idea that even the really smart people don't want to deal with Kelvin. I'm going to suggest to you that you should learn Kelvin. And here's the thing. White balance, and I'm going to explain my whole thing here, but for white balance, I'm going to repeat this a few times. If you want to start to learn white balance, here is the general rule of thumb when it comes to learning and getting to know Kelvin. If you see red in the sky, go to cloudy. Otherwise, shoot auto white balance. And when you feel like you've got that mastered, take the next leap. Now, what am I talking about? So we have our delightful cameras, right? That, as you know, I affectionately call the cold-hearted bastard. Now, they are looking at the world, and keep in mind that when it comes to data, and that's really what the computer thinks our photographs are, is a bunch of data. In the data collection side of this photography game, the camera has the greatest amount of data to start with, and the computer only has the data the camera captured. When it comes to showing you a photograph and giving you possibly ways in which to finish it. So repeat it. You know, computers deal with data, and the greatest data source is that you're seeing with your eyes that the camera sees, because the computer only has the data the camera captured based on you. Okay. Now, photography, root of the word, basically write with light. Write with light. So light there is kind of an important part of this equation. And there's a lot of different functions of light. You have everything from the quality and the quantity. And today we're going to talk about the color. Now, color is really important. I love to use the analogy. I've used it forever. So if I'm going to repeat myself, my apologies. But if you have a coyote walking down the road and it is not quite sunny out and he's walking along, he's going to have a blue color cast. That's just the nature of that kind of light. And that blue color cast, someone's going to look at that picture and they're going to think, oh, that coyote is about to grab Little Red Riding Hood and go off as you know in the story. Now, if we were to take and look at that light and say, "Oh, there's a blue color cast," we need to change the color temperature in which we are capturing this, and we're going to warm up that white balance. So now it's the blue cast color is gone. That coyote that looked like it's about ready to grab Little Red Riding Hood is now all warm and fuzzy. You want to, go play fetch with it. Color is an incredibly important uh, tool, technique, methodology, way of grabbing and reaching heartstrings. It's an incredibly important way of manipulating how people see what we're trying to communicate. It's all based on color. We're really, really color dominant species. Now, what does that have to do with photography? Because people often, when I they ask this question, I go down this path. They'll say, "Well, I can just change that in post," and that is very true. That's very true. You can, but getting back to that data collection, and you can do this test yourself. I really recommend you do it, and you see it for yourself. You can increase how much information your camera captures by changing that white balance to the correct white balance. There are things called color meters. Oh, God. When I went to school and I had this book, Encyclopedia of Photography, there on my shelf, we had color meters. Minolta Color Meter 3. They were expensive. Oh my God, were they expensive. And you could take that and it had a little white dome and you'd stick it in the light and it'd tell you the Kelvin temperature. And it was really important back when I was going to school because we were shooting with film and film was pegged at either 3200 or 5500, tungsten film or daylight film. And if you were shooting somewhere and you were shooting daylight film, but the color temperature that's falling in the scene was not 5500 Kelvin, we had this delightful big box. I had a big box. It was about 18 inches long. It was full of 3x3 Kodak gel rattan filters. And you would take them out. And I had the AF1, which is a Nikon gel filter holder for 52 millimeter front filters. Had AF2 for 77. And you would screw that onto your lens. You'd pull down the front door. You would carefully take out your rattan filter. And these things were about $9 a piece. They lasted, about 3 or 4 shoots, at which point you had to replace them. And you would use your color meter. You look at the math and you figure out which rattan color filter you needed to bring out the correct color, especially you're shooting things like fashions or car where color correctness was important. And there was nothing called a computer or Photoshop back then. There was just knowledge and craftsmanship. Such is not the case today. We have digital cameras. We can literally dial in very specific Kelvin numbers, but we have lost this craft. Now, in digital, when you do it correctly, like I said, you can expand the amount of information your camera will capture. What test would I recommend? First of all, get a tripod. Ooh, that's the first weird thing I'm going to tell you because as you know, I don't like tripods. You put your camera on that tripod, and I would personally have that black, that white, and that mid-tone colored teddy bear, and I'd shoot it first in full shade, then in half shade, and full sun. And almost every camera out there has a bracketing feature for white balance. So let the camera, your tool you use all the time, teach you a little bit about Kelvin and shoot that bracketing test and watch what happens not just to the color, okay? Not just to the color, but watch the information that you either gain or lose depending on what scenario you're doing in the shadows and highlight. And then once you shoot that test for yourself, because I don't want you to take my word for this, bring him in the computer and take that picture that is at the zero, okay, or the whatever is the one that is the default that everything the camera's going to go with, and then go into Adobe Camera Raw and change that white balance, and look at the information you don't really gain in highlights and shadows in doing that. Yes, you get the color, but you don't get that information. And I really encourage you to do that. And yes, this is a very boring test. Yes, it's a very laborious test. And if you do it, I guarantee you're going to be going down a rabbit hole that you're going to say, "Curse you, Moose Peterson," because it takes a lot of time, years and years, to literally train your eye to see the color of the light falling on the scene, deciding and understanding what your camera's going to do with that light, know what it's going to do to your image, and what that's going to do to the viewer of your photograph and reaching their heartstrings. This is not easy stuff. That's why it's left to auto white balance, AWB. That's why so few people actually talk about this or teach this. But the my peers like Joe McNally and Scott Kelvin and Dave Black, so many, you will see them continually talking about white balance. They will gel light sources. They will, and all that has to do with white balance. And white light in itself can be good, can be bad. Uh, how do you then, if the Encyclopedia of Photography bails on Kelvin and it's so complicated, people don't want to teach it. How do you get started? If you see red in the sky, go to cloudy. Otherwise, shoot auto white balance. And once you get comfortable with that, start moving forward. Now, I just had to experience this last week in Yellowstone. Beautiful morning. And I had it the week before a number of times in New Mexico, where we had the sun coming up or sun going down. And I encourage a number of people to raise their Kelvin. 9,000 is a great place. I tend to go higher sometimes, but then I used to carry around that box of rattan filters, so I feel comfortable with this whole process. And shoot some 9,000 in those scenarios, sunrise and sunset, and watch what happens. You could be shooting, towards the sun, and foreground might look like it's all blocked up in shadow, and then you raise that Kelvin to 9,000, all of a sudden you go, "Whoa, there's information down there now." It's the magic of Kelvin. It is the math of Kelvin. It is color temperature, it's white balance, all those things wrapped together. And it's such an important part of the photographic process. There are, I posted a photograph um, last week of a bison as the sun just started to come up and it was kissing it. And the foreground, the sage hadn't seen any sun yet. It was on a little ridge rise, and the bison was on top of the rise itself. The sage was on the slant of the rise in the shadow. It's a classic example of Kelvin temperature because the light kissing that bison is nice and warm because it's just starting to come up over the horizon. The sage was in that shadow. You got this definite blue color cast. So just those two colors in the one frame, that really warmth of sunrise, the cold of the morning, it's a cold morning. Yeah, you'll see the frost on the back of the bison, but it's that in almost half the frame in that blue light that just gives you the shivers. And then you see the warmth in the bison, the critter. The critter has got that kiss of warmth. You can't help but fall for that bison. You sympathize with it. You wish it well. And it's all because of color. If I were to take that same photograph and remove the blue color cast of the foreground and remove the warmth of the bison, I would delete the picture. I would not even taken that photograph. That's how powerful and important Kelvin is. So I'm hoping that by introducing you to Kelvin, you might just start your foray into white balance and seeing how much data your camera really can collect, how much you can really truly manipulate your photograph by just understanding that one segment of light, color, and then using it to help tell your story. But I'm warning you, and I'm being upfront here. You start down the path of white balance, it's a rabbit hole, and I've started many a photographer in that, and yeah, their brain just go. You folks have a great week. Challenge yourself, challenge your photography, and make every click your story.